present about the myth of Cuban health, a document, a very interesting document, very documented, very deep about the health in Cuba, based on scientific papers that Fundación Bases gather to make a picture of what is in reality the health system in Cuba and outside Cuba in their missions. So I'm honored to present Franco Martín López, which is the executive director of Fundación Bases. Hello, Franco. How are you? He's one of the other authors of the document, which I appreciated very much since the first time I read it. Thank you, Marco, for hosting us here.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you for being our host in this event. Thank you also for your all the collaboration you've done with spreading the word about this document, and also thank you for all the work you do in Prisoners Defenders, trying to stop human trafficking conducted by the socialist structure in Cuba. And also thank you to Dr. Emilio Arteaga for participating here, for telling his story, and also for his personal fight in this struggle.
And I'm honored also to present, to introduce to you Dr. Emilio Arteaga Perez, which is a specialist who participated in 3 missions in Bolivia, Angola, and Namibia, and he knows very well what is the myth of Cuban health, and he suffers it too, because he would like to see another scenario. Good afternoon, Emilio. How are you?
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon for everyone. Good afternoon, Franco. Good afternoon, Javier. It's a pleasure to be here again to share our experience. It's very important for us to make that meeting, because it's very interesting things aspect to discussing in this meeting today in this afternoon. So it's a pleasure, a big pleasure for me to be here again. Thank you, and good afternoon for everyone to be in the meeting and the public.
Dr. Emilio Arteaga, he's a honor title, gold title in psychiatrist, and also professor at the University of Havana, which I understand no more can be practiced because you are out of the missions. But thank you very much, Emilio, for being here, sharing your testimony. Well, I'm going to try to. Thank you. I'm going to try to start with a presentation over the Cuban medical missions, and I'm going to share a presentation. So let's see if we can see it here. Okay. There you see the doctor handcuffed. That's how they feel. But I'm going to try to explain the chronology of the sources that have denounced the slavery and the forced labor and the trafficking in persons in this Cuban missions. We can go back in time to the British Medical Journal in 2010, and it denounced the slavery of Cuban doctors in Portugal, in a mission in Portugal. Then in 2018, the Universal Periodic Review on Cuba, on its 24230 epigraph, it denounced the coercive conditions in which doctors were on mission abroad, but also Cuban doctors were on mission abroad, but also it encouraged Cuba to sign the Palermo treaties, which has not signed. Then in 2018, after, let's say, a year of investigation by prisoners defenders members, a few less than a year, we introduced a complaint at the International Criminal Court and at the United Nations on this trafficking in person situation in the Cuban medical missions, which gave a very prompt result in November 2019 with a communication, a letter from the UN accusing Cuba of modern slavery and forced labor in those missions, not only because of our sources, but also mentioning that they did their own investigation. Two mandates of special rapporteurships did an excellent job and described almost all things that are happening in these missions. Then in 2020, Human Rights Foundation accused Cuba of modern slavery and medical missions, also describing some of the conditions in which the doctors go on working abroad. Then in July 23rd, Human Rights Watch published a report endorsing the slave status of the missions, and it was focused on the legal aspects of those, because the legislation that is related to these missions it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and it's one of the main reasons why the United Nations recalled or communicated Cuba, accusing them of slavery and forced labor. Then the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights in April this year endorses all accusations of previous reports and recall Cuba to stop those practices of modern slavery and forced labor. But also in June this year, the European Parliament endorsed the accusations, and also in its executive epigraphs, it recalled to let the doctors be free to come back to Cuba, to not to have all the conditions that we're going to describe in next slides. So you see that this is not an accusation of prisoners defenders. This is not even an accusation. It's a reality that the United Nations, Human Rights Watch, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, European Parliament, British Medical Journal, and so many have seen and reported through many years. So the most intense, the last 2 years. But let's see, tens of thousands of professionals in Cuba, as a punishment, they're forbidden to see their families again for 8 years. It's a punishment because they did not come back to Cuba when they finished their mission, as it is mandatory, or they left the mission, they left their job. It is a job, they are civil workers. They left the job to take another one in any country. So they lose all their citizenship rights and they cannot see their families. It's a tragedy of horrendous dimensions because thousands of parents today cannot see their children for at least 8 years, at least, because it can be more. Many have not seen them at all in much more time since they left Cuba. So this is a tragedy, but it is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to see how this prohibition is enforced. There is an article in the Cuban Penal Code, Article 135, that reserves a prison sentence of 8 years for workers who change the job of working in the mission abroad for the Cuban government to any other, or after finishing and completing the mission, they don't come back to Cuba. 8 years of prison. Of course, they cannot put them in jail. It's impossible. They are outside Cuba. So as a doctor is outside, the Ministry of Interior classifies as a traitor to the homeland, deserter, and undesirable for at least 8 years, extendable by authorities. We have many cases that of this extension. And the migration law, Article 24.1.e, defines undesirables as inadmissible. They cannot enter the country anymore as long as they're undesirable, deserter, traitor to the homeland, which is defined by the Ministry of Interior. So 8 or more years banned to enter the country. Children, spouses, they cannot see their family again, and the family cannot get out of the island. But before the mission, let's understand what is happening to doctors in the country. Professionals cannot have an ordinary passport. First of all, they cannot do tourism like normal people in every country. They don't have a corriente passport. They don't have an ordinary passport, and cannot travel because there's a law, the migration law, and a decree, the decree 306, which is called over the treatment towards the cadres, professionals, and athletes who required authorization to travel abroad. Imagine that this is the title of the law. They required authorization to travel abroad. Professionals cannot free themselves from the profession, neither. I mean, okay, I cannot travel if I am a doctor, but I'm going to leave the profession and then travel. No, you have to wait 5 years because the law says we have to replace the professional. So it's very easy to take 1,000 doctors to Brazil or to any country, Gabon, in Africa, or wherever. It's very easy to do it in 1 month, 2 months. But the doctor who wants to leave the profession to be able to travel, he has to wait 5 years because he has to be replaced. And they take 5 years to replace the professional. Leaving the country without explicit permission, also for doctors and for anyone, is prosecuted and punishable by imprisonment. Those are the Articles 216 and 217 of the Cuban Penal Code. So imagine the kind of jail that I'm describing for doctors. Professionals cannot go abroad without discretionary authorization. The decree decides and defines how it is decided, the cadres and workers who require authorization to travel abroad. So you can see that they are trapped in Cuba. Their only way out, even if they want to do tourism, many times is to go on mission. So, well, the decree law 306, which is unbelievable, only the title on the treatment of cadres, professionals, and athletes requiring authorization to travel abroad. That is the title. It covers all managers. It covers all professionals who have any higher education. Mid-level technicians also. This is how it is defined. So it covers hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in Cuba. So this is how they feel trapped in the island. 5 years trapped and having to resign your profession to be able to get out from Cuba once, or if you want to leave abroad. Okay, so what are the framework conditions once they go on a mission, which is spoiled by many reasons, economical, wanting to travel abroad, wanting to do something for a country that needs it, needs health. Well, they receive 15% of the salary that the governments pay for them in the country abroad. They receive 100. The Cuban government gets 85. So that's about the money. But they are forced to return to Cuba or lose everything, because the 15% they receive is not, they don't receive it in cash. They receive one part frozen in the island in a government bank. And if they don't come back when they tell them, they lose everything. So, well, these are some of the conditions. They are subrogated to Cuban law and the resolution 168. We'll see what the resolution 168 says. Even if they are abroad, they are subrogated to Cuban law. And Cuba makes clear in their agreements with countries that Cuban people have to be subrogated to Cuban law, which is illegal. The Cuban government withholds extra amounts under false pretenses of any type. Well, we need some money to the startup costs, so we'll take from your first salary, we'll take 50% of the 15% they already receive. Things like that. They are obliged to pay fees to organizations dependent on the Communist Party. They are obliged to pay fees to the Communist Party while they're abroad. But there is much more. There is much more. Their passports are confiscated on arrival at destination. They are not identified in the country. And most of the countries, their passports are confiscated by the Cuban government once they arrive in the airport of the destination. They take all the passports and they keep it in a bag and they say, well, you're mine. Your identity is mine. They are prohibited from carrying the legalized titles. They cannot carry their legalized titles. That means they're not identified. They're no person. They're no professional in that country. And it's incredible because doctors have to carry their title to exercise in other countries. But Cuba makes those countries to sign that they cannot ask for their titles. They only can ask a certificate from the Cuban government saying, yeah, he's a physician. That's all. And the government that receives them, the host, is believing the Cuban government. That's why not only doctors travel in missions, of course. They are not allowed to marry with anyone in the country abroad, because if they marry, they get the residence in the country, and the slave escapes. That's it. No, don't look any farther. They do all this because without a passport, without a professional qualification, you're not a person. And if you're not allowed to marry, you cannot have the residency. So it is the same scheme as white slavery, as the trafficking in person with women. It is the same scheme. So let's see the regulation 168. It is for civilian overseas workers, okay? It is very important because it says it in a title, they are civilian. Okay, the duties. Returning to Cuba at the end of their mission. It is mandatory. Inform, and this is taken from the law. This sentence, it is explicitly taken from the law. Inform their immediate superior of their amorous relationships with nationals of foreigners, whether or not resident in the country where they are working. Unbelievable, but there are more unbelievable sentences. they have to request authorization to travel to provinces or localities other than those of their place of work, not only while they are working, of course, during weekends and all the time. Well, we have the penalties, the infractions penalties that are hardly prohibited. Participating in social events without authorization, taken from the law, live in the country where he or she provides services without authorization, unauthorized time spent in a different locality or province, even if it is weekends or free time, no matter. It is not authorized. You cannot go to different localities or provinces. Living with unauthorized persons. I mean, what kind of business tells you what person is authorized or not to live, to share your apartment with? It's incredible, but it says it in the law. Sustaining relationship with anyone with conducts and behavior contrary to Cuba's principles, that is prohibited. Sustaining links with anyone with anti-revolutionary positions. They have to explain me what is anti-revolutionary, because I think what they did on July 11th is anti-revolutionary in a worldwide definition, but they have another one. Sustaining links with Cubans who took advantage of the missions to defect. Took advantage of the mission. Who's taking advantage in a worker business relation? Both. And you cannot say they took advantage to defect. No. They are delivering a service, and they can stop delivering the service as free citizens whenever they want. No. They see it in a very different way. Sustaining links with anyone contrary to a partner's principles. Well, if these are the partner's principles, then we are going badly. Failure to report gifts received to superiors. I mean, if they receive any gift from anyone, not only a patient, no, a friend, they have to report it to superiors. Arranging with national or foreigners for invitations to the family members. The family members cannot travel outside Cuba to see them. They are prohibited to do so. So they don't want the family of the doctor to be with him a long time, because they can think of leaving the mission and staying in abroad in the other country. So they don't want the slave to do that. So they prohibit it. But they also prohibit that someone in the country makes you the favor of inviting your family, doing an invitation to your family for you to be able to see them once in a year. No, they prohibit this. Driving means of transport without being expressly authorized. They cannot drive. They cannot drive by law, even if they have their license and they are perfect drivers. They cannot. Failure to give sufficient advance notice of intention to marry. This is critical for them. They don't want you to marry abroad, because you can ask for your residency in the country abroad, and they would lose one worker, and we'll see what they get from these workers. So these are the kind of things that law specifies, and that is eschatological. That is it is gross to read that law. Also the Cuban Penal Code, but it's very explicit. And how are we standing in dozens of countries that these people are traveling under those laws? It's unbelievable. Huh? The affected population is 15,000 to 100 civilian professionals a year. Not only doctors, you have professors, engineers, athletes, musicians, any professionals, as we saw before. About 1 million affected, 1 million persons in Cuba, because their families are affected by this too. Their children are affected. Sectors: health professionals, teachers, engineers, sportsmen and women, artists, the turnover, and this is the key of the business. It is the highest income for Cuba. It is the highest one, $8.5 billion, compared to tourism, which is only 2.9 billion, or remittances, which is only 4 billion, 6 billion sometimes, 3 billion last year, as I've been told, as researchers have told us. But this is the critical point. They are extracting all they can from those workers, so they don't want no worker to defect. Of course, they're getting 85% of their blood. Countries involved: more than 100 countries have hosted these activities in 57 years. Now we calculate around 60 countries have these missions, more than 60. And it's a sad story, because there are some countries who claim to be democratic or claim to have human rights, and they are not. They are not. They cannot claim that while they have people serving for health while extracting that service from slavery. No, cannot be like that. The monthly salary of Cuban professional on mission, you can see it here. This is the average of all declarations we have, 622 testimonies. So we have in Belize, we have Belize, we have $71 a month per doctor. In Pakistan, 95. But you see numbers that are higher in Qatar, for example, 750. Yeah, but Qatar pays Cuba from $10,000 to $13,000 a month. And they are paying their doctors. The Cuban government is paying their doctors only 700 and something, okay? It's unbelievable. In Saudi Arabia, they get 1,000, but that is officially below the level of poverty in Saudi Arabia. And also, the Cuban government gets more than $6,000 a month per doctor. So they get a fraction. That is how it works. It is an economical, it is a capitalistic business. It is a slavery capitalistic business of a government who claims to be socialist. That is not to laugh. It would be to laugh for anyone else. But for us who work on this and who see the suffering of these doctors, it is a very, very extremely sad story. The Cuban government pays an average of $490 to Cuban professionals on mission, while Cuba charges an average of just over $3,500 for each of them. In some countries, the host pays the government, and the government only gives a fraction to the doctor. In other countries, like Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia pays the doctor, and the doctor is obliged to return by remittances every month 80% of their salary to the Cuban government in Cuba, to a bank in Cuba. That's how it works. So, the Cuban government has so much control of these doctors that they give back the money. If not, they lose their family, they lose their titles, their passport. They are persecuted in the country, and they are marked for life. If they get them, they take them to Cuba, and they are marked for life. If not, if they get to escape, they will be escaping the whole life and under extreme pressure for not having passport, their titles, and everything. So they get 15%. The testimonies of the victims, this is a share of professionals. The share of professionals we have in this 622 testimonies is this, which is strange because specialists are much more present than family doctors compared to what the Cuban government takes abroad. The Cuban government takes mostly family doctors. The problem is the ones who trust more in themselves, the specialists, are the ones who take the step to defect and to get out from the mission. That's why the share is completely different to others. No, these are the testimonies, the number of testimonies that we have from some countries in which Venezuela and Brazil are very present. And in the case of Brazil, there are some things that implicate that the statistics are a little better. For example, in Brazil, they didn't take their passports. And you'll see it in the statistics, but in most countries they do. In Venezuela, they do. Well, we see that in many countries all over the world, there are defecting. There are doctors who are defecting and professionals, and they need our support all over the world, because at first, 70% of them, they say that they did not volunteer. Only 16% they volunteered, but for coercive reasons, and 14% for economic reasons. Only economic reasons, only coercive reasons, and did not volunteer. Those are the shares. Most of them do not want to go. They have to go because they are forced to, or they have to go because if not, the consequences are worse for them. The economic reasons and the coercive reasons are various. 40% for travel and immigration and migration impediments. If they want to get out from Cuba, we explain why they can't. Fear of saying no. There is an auto censorship in the Cuban because they have a life debt. 33% of them confess that they have a life debt because they were educated in a free system, high education system, and they tell them from very young in all media, they tell them that is to give back to the country, and they have to give back to the country, but for how long? All life. Okay. In preparation for the mission, they don't get contracts. I mean, they signed and were given a copy, 33% of the 622, which 150 were from Brazil, where they had to have a contract. That is one of the only countries where they had a contract. And that's why the statistics show 33%. If not, it would show less than 10%. 32% do not have a contract at all, and 35% they signed without any negotiation, without even seeing many of the papers they are signing, but they are given no copy even. Okay, the statistics show that they don't know the final destination. They are saying you're going to Brasilia, and they are taken to the woods. I mean, and that is 77% of them, of the 622 testimonies, who confess they did not know the final destination, or it was not met upon arrival. 75% had to attend a Communist Party course to reinforce revolutionary principles. And this is a certificate. It says, ideological, political preparation for collaborators, international collaborators in the sector of health. Why in the world, a physician has to have a political and ideological preparation, and it is mandatory to have this because they are forced to do many things that do not relate to medicine. And you'll see 40% they are extracted from their passport. But remember that the 150 testimonies from Brazil are here, decreasing this number. If you take those out, more than 70% or more than 60-something% are extracted. They are taking their passports. Okay, they are watched by Cuban officials all the time. They are obliged in personal and political matters by a regulation, the 168 regulation. They cannot stay overnight outside their assigned place. That is, I don't know how it is called in English, but toque de queda in Spanish, which means after 6 o'clock, you cannot get out from your room. That's what it works in many of those countries, and not for security reasons, just to control them. The email communications was monitored. They cannot drive cars, as we said, but this is testimony. This is based on testimonies. They had all kind of movement restrictions. They cannot leave their home after a certain time. They are obliged to attend political meetings. All these conditions are something incredible. But imagine having a person that you're enslaving, and you are a government like Cuban. Well, they force them to increase falsely the statistics, their medical statistics. They are confessing, more than 50% of them, that they are going against their their Hippocratic assessment. I don't know how to say it in English. They are saying something that is very hard to say for a physician. And more than 50% say, yeah, I was forced to falsely increase the medical statistics. So what they are doing is a bluff. The missions are a bluff in terms of statistics and how many people they cure, how many people they treat, how many operations they do. It's a bluff. It is false, because they are confessing, all of them. More than 300 said, no, I was forced to increase the statistics falsely. Okay, and there is more. 75% suffered or saw colleagues being threatened. 20% suffered or saw physical violence by officials or their permissiveness, okay, over the doctors. 40% suffered or saw colleagues suffer sexual harassment by civil servants, by the officials, the Cuban officials, or with their perceived permissiveness. That is what is happening in these missions. Because if they are enslaved, the chief of mission does whatever he wants, not only changing statistics, but also sexual harassment, physical violence, threatens, whatever. Okay, so these are the statistics. The countries, when you take all these violations and put them in vigilance, civil rights, rights of identification and secretion, exploitation, sexual harassment, you see these bars that show the different countries like Venezuela, Brazil, which was a little bit better. But imagine what is that they are telling you, that there is sexual harassment, there is more than 50% of threat and violence over the doctors, done by the officials, falsifying medical registries and statistics. the vigilance, and this is one of the best cases. Imagine Guatemala. Guatemala is a jail for those doctors. Those more than 300 doctors that are in Guatemala right now are living a hell, and Guatemala's government is permitting this. It's unbelievable. Ecuador, Haiti. So we have thousands of complaints over singular violations. If you count them, all the responses, because every doctor that testimonied here responded to, let's say, between 80 to 120, 130 questions on violations. So these are the different axes of violation. It's unbelievable. But let's say another thing to end this presentation. Cuba is saying that, no, we are very solidary. We are helping humanity and all that. Okay, and they are saying, no, in countries who do not have money, we're going there for free. Well, it is not the truth. That is called a tripartite collaboration. Haiti needs a country who pays for those services, okay? And Norway pays for those services. Cape Verde is needed for those services, and Luxembourg is paying for those services. Guinea-Bissau needs Portugal or any country, any rich country, to pay for those services, and they are paying for those services, but not to those governments to use local doctors and enhance the level of health in the country. No. They're paying it to Cuba. And Cuba, of course, collects that money. And the state security and the Castro family is getting that money. And what is happening with the rest? Because you can imagine in Norway pays thousands of dollars. Norway cannot pay, $500 to a doctor working all the time abroad his house. No, they're paying thousands. But what is getting the doctor, the Cuban doctor in Haiti? $250 a month. With this pattern of violation over vigilance, social rights and thought, identification and circulation, exploitation, sexual harassment, threats, falsifying medical registries and statistics, and forced engagement. And Portugal, Norway, and Luxembourg are paying for this result. Of course, there's another result on health. But do you really want human being to put health on one side over slavery below? Or we have to take slavery out and please protect health while protecting human being? That is the key that Portugal, Norway, Luxembourg should look at this problem. No? So I want to end the presentation introducing Franco. Franco is gonna speak us about his research, his document, The Myth of Cuban Health, which is in English too, and it's an amazing document. Franco, I have to tell you, the first time I read it, it was months ago, and I was the one to contact you and said, "Hey, Franco, you've done an enormous job here, researching all the scientific papers that demonstrate what is happening with Cuban health." I thank you very much for all this initiative and give you the floor.
Well, thank you, Javier. Effectively, as you said, this is a document that we produce in Fundación Bases. I am co-authoring the document with Santiago Ramón, that is one of our leading research assistants. And basically, what we did was not to create new information out of new sources, but basically we collected all the documents that were already available online about the state and the structure of Cuban health. And after that, we basically compiled that into one document in Spanish. We published that, and then with the help of the Victims of Communism Foundation, we were able to translate that document into English. Curiously enough, most of the research and the sources about the subject were basically in English. There is a great, let's say, in Spanish, it's hard to find research that deals with this problem in at least trying to be objective manner. So most of the sources were documents in English, many of them published by Oxford University. So just to start, just to give a hint about what the document does, we started with the question of how could a poor country with so many problems that it's not able to provide basic social services and a good quality of life in many aspects of the social and economic life, like Cuba was providing such a good service, or at least showing such good statistics in the matter of health. So with this doubt in mind, we collected this document, and what we found was basically that the island was reporting two basic and really important statistics that are in health matters, infant mortality, and on the other hand, basically life expectancy. There are many statistics relating health issues, but these two numbers are are among the most viewed numbers about health issues. So when they reported these numbers, they were reporting around, and this changes from year to year, but around 5 deaths per 1,000 live births. And on the other hand, they were reporting around 80 years as life expectancy. This is comparable or even better to some really developed countries like Canada, the United States, and some European countries. And this was completely detached from the economics numbers. If you see, the island has less than $8,000 US in relative terms per capita as national GDP. So there was a great difference between the health numbers that were really good and the rest of the statistics. So there was also a paradox, not only between economic and health number statistics, but also between some specific health numbers when you started to deal with a greater depth into the subject. So, for example, if you look to a number that is not so popular, not so famous, like maternal mortality, the country had around 40 deaths per 100,000 births, and this is around the double to the rest, to the same statistics in the countries in the rest of the Latin American countries like Chile, Costa Rica, Uruguay, etc. So basically, there was not a clear matching between some health statistics in this area. Also, it is a country that has around 7.5 doctors per 1,000 inhabitants, in comparison to numbers like 1 in Chile, slightly above 1 in Costa Rica, almost 4 in Uruguay. So you start seeing that the numbers don't match and don't seem to be coherent on the general structure. And what the researchers found, basically, Berdin and Geloso and Powell, Octavio Gomez de Dantes, Roberto González, Rodolfo Stusser, what they basically found was that, based on the assumptions of some hints that they had because they had contact with some Cuban doctors that escaped from the island and from the system, and they told some problems about the system. They went and they looked into the statistics, and they found that the rate between late fetal deaths and early neonatal deaths was really high. Usually this number is supposed to be between 1 and 3, so you will have between 1 and 3 late fetal deaths in comparison to the number of neonatal deaths. But in Cuba, that number was around 6. It was extremely high. It was more than double the average number in Latin American countries. So what they found was basically, and again, based also on complaints and also on critics of doctors that were explaining what they were doing in Cuba, was that there was a kind of like general directive about what to do with the statistics, and what they were doing was they were reclassifying early neonatal deaths that by protocol are counted into the number of deaths that are going to affect infant mortality and life expectancy. They were reclassifying them as late fetal deaths that are not counted into the statistics. So basically, by putting these people that were supposed to be counted as death into these numbers in another category, by protocol, they were not counting them, and they were deflating, as a matter of saying, the general statistics of infant mortality and also of life expectancy. When you study this specific procedures and you try to fix the numbers just based on this specific problem, what you find is that instead of having around 6 infant mortality death per 1,000 births, what you found is that the number ranges between 8 and 12. So it's basically it doubles into what it actually is. And also that you find that life expectancy decreases by around 0.5 years. But this was not exactly the only, let's say, problem that you could find in order to, or that you can find when you study how they were manipulating the statistics. They were also doing things in the field, in the hospitals, not only with the registry of death, but also directly over the patients. For example, the doctors tried, because they want to fulfill some specific numbers, or because they are directed to, they force hospitalizations of at-risk mothers in order to avoid bad statistics when they are not necessarily needed. So they are like overprotective, in matter of saying, of the mother without the consent of the mother, without informing to the family and the mother what are the actual risks, so they can take a decision about if they want to be hospitalized or not. Also, doctors force abortions in risky cases without the consent of the mother. In some cases, or even the consent of the family if the mother is not in a position to take that decision. Basically, they over exaggerate the risk in order to convince people that they should abort, or what they do is they proceed to abort without any question or consent from the family, with the argument that they wanted to protect the life of the mother. In many cases, they are doing this not because it's really necessarily in by protocol or in health terms, but only because they want to avoid any kind of risk that in other country would be covered with health and with regular procedures in medical terms. Also, in addition to this, what they do is they, in some cases, when there are abortions, they don't count those abortions, and they discard alive kids that are born with problems and deformities, and they are prone to die. So again, they can deflate these numbers. If you want some statistical proof of how this procedure is going on, Cuba has 73 number of abortions per 100 births, in comparison to countries like Spain with 24 or Uruguay with 26, all countries where abortion is legal. So you have to count that Cuba has around 3 times the number of abortions that a regular country has when it has legalized abortion. basically because they are using this as a way to deflate bad statistics that they would have if the system was working in any other country. When you combine all of these methods and you try to correct again the numbers of infant mortality and life expectancy, what you find is that the island has between 1.5 and 1.8 years less of life expectancy. So the island should be around 77 and a half years of life expectancy instead of having around 80 when you combine all of these procedures. But again, this complex system that is built just to fulfill a number that is going to be reported abroad in order to justify the regime that rules the island. When you analyze this, in some cases you will also have to demystify the concept of how bad the health system of the island was working before the socialist revolution. Because if you go to UNESCO, for example, numbers in 1958, you will find that, for example, Cuba had the third and fourth highest number in Latin America of number of doctors and nurses per inhabitant. So you will find that the system was not working poorly before the revolution, and after the revolution, what you find is that a lie is built around these statistics that are not real and are not actually universal. Also, the system has some other issues regarding how it works towards the people in general, and what you find is that you have three parallel health systems. On the one hand, you have a quality system that is built for tourism, basically for health tourism, in which you will find the best system of the island working for foreigners that will pay in US dollars and that will bring a lot of money for the maintenance of the regime. The second system uses also this structure and is built and is built for basically for the members of the regime and their families. But these two systems are the ones that work. Then you have the third system that is the real universal and public health Cuban system that basically doesn't work, and that is the only system that regular people has access to. There you will find that the facilities are in extremely poor state. There are no supplies. People has to take and buy on the black market their own medicines, supplies like, for example, pillows, or maybe you have to bring your own, I don't know, let's say light bulbs. So in your room you will have some light at night. This system is completely broken. In some cases, people will just choose to go to the black market and be and require health services outside of the legal system. In many cases, it's so impossible to actually work in these buildings and these places that doctors just go into the black market. So no one is using the public facilities. And also because of the poverty of the island and of the problem of incentives inside this structure, many doctors are forced and maybe tempted to stop providing good services in the public facilities and steal some of the few resources that they have in these buildings, like medicines, for example, and provide and sell them in the black market. Finally, if you want to analyze, let's say, the last part of this curse of the Cuban health system, you could go into the general problems of how they treat the patient. Legally, there are no privacy rights for patients in Cuba. Doctors are forced to report political dissidents, also patients. There is basically no legal possibility of the demand of the legal complaint in case of malpractice. and most of the decisions are taken by the state or by the doctor around national political objectives instead of caring for the actual health of the patient. I am sure that then Emilio will be able to actually complete this perspective and give some examples. Also, there are specific political persecution to dissidents and critics of the system, like Dr. Oscar Elias Bisset or Hilda Molina Morejón, that were people that were from the party, even they were inside the system, and when they said or expressed the most minimal critic to the system, they were persecuted, they were jailed, they were banned from leaving the island. Well, I think that probably the most famous case was the case of Hilda Molina Morejón. That was she was permitted to finally, after many years of persecution, to emigrate to Argentina. But generally, what you have is basically a kind of like Soviet-style pressure and no possibility of dissent system over patients and over doctors, even over the highest authorities of the systems. And as the last example, before going into a summary of what you, Javier, said about these slave missions abroad that they have, if you want a concrete example of how the Cuban government handles health during the 1980s with the HIV, let's say, pandemic, now that there is so famous this kind of word, the government first implemented mandatory HIV testing, and also they implemented a compulsory confinement regime for people that were positively diagnosed with HIV. So basically they were put into some kind of concentration camps with poor qualities of lives, and in many cases they were badly treated because, as we all know, the HIV crisis started in targeting this because of questions of social and biological issues regarding the host and the virus. It started as a problem that was basically thought only as an homosexual problem, and then was completely proven wrong. But it started in this kind of like sexual group. So the regime decided to confine specifically homosexuals and to discriminate them, perpetuating a policy that they had from the beginning of the revolution as against homosexuals with a really discriminatory approach. If you want to summarize the last parts of what the document tries to explain, that is basically the international missions of Cuban doctors abroad that you have perfectly explained, what we find is that it's basically like around half of Cuban doctors are working abroad. They are basically the main source of foreign exchange and income for the system, and they are structured, as you explained, in a way that constitutes a violation of labor and human rights, because they are basically a human trafficking structure. They are an organization that is supported paradoxically by institutions like the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, and also by countries, foreign countries, in some cases, rich countries that pay and accept the system and the doctors, not only to pay for the services, but also to accept their services in their countries. If you want an example that you have perfectly explained, for example, in Brazil in 2014, the country paid around $4,000 to the regime, from which the doctor only received around $1,000. But from this $1,600 were withheld by the government in a bank account until the doctor returned to Cuba. So only only around $400 were allowed for the doctor to be used as a salary, as income. But you will say, well, why are many doctors accepting going into these missions? Well, basically, they usually don't have an option. They have to serve abroad. Basically, they are pressured to serve abroad. They receive personal threats to their family, and the possibility of punishment if they refuse or if they resign after accepting this. And also, in comparison to living in the island, usually living in another country that is not Cuba provides you with a better life quality and also with higher income. In Cuba, someone working as a doctor usually earns around $50. So you are even considering that you're earning much less than what is paid for the service, you are still earning a lot more in comparison to what you can earn in the island. Also, you have to, well, we can summarize these prohibitions that you said regarding they are not allowed to move in the country they go to. They are forced to return. There are withholdings of passports. There are surveillance agents that control them. They have to work 64 hours a week, and they are demanded to denounce and to spy on their colleagues. As you said, there is legal punishment of around 8 years in case of resigning, and also there's a lot of persecution to their families and to, in general, to all the people they know. And currently, there is around 5,000 doctors that have escaped from this slavery system, and the full system is thought to be of around 30,000 active personnel in around 66 countries. But, well, basically, having explained what the document covers, you can maybe give the word to Emilio that could explain in a full manner this problem of doctors, and also give a personal approach to this experience.
Thank you, Franco. Emilio, we're giving you the floor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, good afternoon again. Thank you, Franco. Thank you, Javier Rondo. I just had to tell that it's not enough at one conference to tell everything what's really happened with doctor who's working in many countries abroad. I feel to say with the point about the ideological and political conditionment to get that work. Even when you want to get the medical career in Cuban university, you have to prove the loyalty on the Cuban Communist Party, so the official political of the country, of the region. That is not changed when you get the work, when you access to the hospital and the health Cuban institution, or every time, even years or over again, always you have to prove every time the loyalty of the regime. This is the most of the point of view. The other is the people who's watching you, people who is not a doctor. They are political police. They will send that people from the Interior Ministry to that country to check in, to watching you, to follow you. They create a web of other people, other doctors, other colleagues, to check in what really you are thinking, what you say, what you write in the social media. It's many things. They are really happening in that place. It's many troubles with that people who suffering from slavery. They are suffering from persecution, political persecution, and it's not insane. This is very insane. This is very, very, very abnormal situation. This is abnormal way to be in the world. That's why I think, in my opinion, my point of view, even economical pressure, psychological pressure, psychological stress, and psychological factor, but the worst is the persecution. In my point of view, is one of the most important thing and factor is impacting the doctor and people from individual decision to escape, to say off and stop it, and go out to other country and go out to other side or whatever is it's very, 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 very difficult to explain that. I just want to subscribe everything, every point of view from Franco, from Javier. Both explain everything, every details. I don't have any more to add. Just say it's true. Everything we are discussing here in this conference is true, absolutely true. Even more because we have many testimony from many doctors, and they are telling true. This have to stop. This is a crime. We need to stop it. Other thing we are suffering is the involvement in that country to participate in political meeting, political propaganda, official propaganda. They send doctors to the street to make a proselytist function, even mixed with the political from this country. This is many factors to say and to denounce, to say here. I hope we can together stop it. Thank you. Yes?
Well, thank you very much, Emilio. Thank you very much. You've suffered, you know very well what is the persecution issue, because you've been, if I remember well, like 4 months in a shoebox, let's say, hidden from the security of state in Namibia, to be able to get out from that country safely, to make a living anywhere in the world, because you were afraid, of course, as being a professor at the University of Havana, being named physician, you were gonna have huge problems with your life if they found you, no? So I'm glad you're here, but there are thousands of doctors who suffer that today. There are many tens of thousands of doctors who have to change statistics in Cuba, who have to pass through all what the document of Fundación Bases and Franco's document tells us that is happening inside Cuba, not only abroad. So I'm glad you were here to testify, to say to the world, we have to stop this. We have to look at human beings who are behind the missions, and not doing politics through slavery, not doing what is happening, you know? So, well, I think we are done with the conference. I don't know if any of you want to say something else before ending it.
Well, Javier, thank you very much for hosting this, and also again, thank you for your work at Prisoners Defenders. Thank you, Emilio. Thank you for your personal fight, and also for being brave enough to actually keep on this fight up to the public and social level. And again, just to summarize, we have to understand that the Cuban health system is a lie. They're not only lying; they are lying with the supports of international organizations and with the support of many countries. They also conduct a human trafficking system. This system is in complete violation of labor and human rights. It should be stopped right away. There are hundreds of documented interviews and testimonies, and there are thousands of cases of people that have escaped. So this is not something that is a random or maybe irrelevant marginal testimony or case. This is a systematic system that should stop. And also, there are huge human rights violations in the island, not only on political terms, but also in terms of patients and doctors and how they treat people in the island. So I think this should stop. We should all keep on spreading the word about this. And well, again, thank you in the name of Fundación Bases.
Thank you very much to both of you. And well, we'll finish the conversation here, the conference. I think it was pretty neat to hear you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much for the invitation.